Denella Ri'chard. I've made a career traveling the world. I've worked for some of the biggest names in travel. And now, I've traded in my business suit for a swimsuit. Swimming with the sharks, swinging at the edge of the world, throwing back a few shots, or shall I say spirits, eating some of the best cuisine, and even making a few furry friends along the way. And now, since everything we know about travel has changed, I invite you to come along with me and rediscover the world. Welcome to Traveling with Denella Ri'chard, the Black History 1 Hour special. In this special, I'll take you along to some of the places that I visited in the Caribbean and the United States that have preserved some notable moments in Black history, as well as discover some remarkable stories of resilience, determination, and achievement that have inspired generations. Take notes, because you'll want to add some of these destinations to your living list of travel experiences. So come along with me and see how Black history is truly world history. We'll start in the Caribbean. The French Caribbean island of Martinique is well known for its unique heritage and preservation of history. I had a chance to speak with the artist and sculptor of the famous Custard Slave Memorial, which pays tribute to the African slaves who lost their lives in the shipwreck of 1830. I'll also take you along to a very special open-air museum, which replicates a post-slavery native village in the area of Trois-Îles. There's so much history to be discovered here in Martinique. So today, I'm on the southwest side of the island at the memorial site of Custard. And I'm about to meet up with the artist, Laurent Valère. Let's go. Laurent, show me where the ship sank in 1830.
Just in these waves. We are in the Bay of Diamant. Diamant is a town in the south side of Martinique. And here, in this place, there were a shipwreck. Wow. Yes, in 1830. April of 1830, yes. And it was a time of illegal trade because slavery was not abolished, because it was abolished here in 1848. But the slave trade was forbidden, was illegal.
So they were sneaking in, like at night, coming in?
Yes.
Oh, wow.
We can compare it with drug trafficking of today. It was the same kind of goals of money, to win money. In this time, so in the night of April of 1830, they found a lot of people dead here, African people, and they were buried under our feet, just here. This place is called Custard. It's the reason why this memorial I made with my team in memory of these people, in memory of these ancestors, is called Memorial de l'Custard, because we are at Custard, and this is a memorial.
Wow. One thing I love about Martinique is that you preserved the history here in Martinique.
Right.
And it's here for people from all over the world to come and remember the many lives that were lost. Bonjour, Robert. So nice to meet you. Enchanté.
Enchanté de te rencontrer aussi.
Ooh, see, ooh, I love your French accent. So tell me, so right now we're in Saint-Pierre. Where exactly is St. Pierre?
Yeah, so we are in Saint-Pierre, in the north of Martinique, on the Caribbean coast, not far from Fort-de-France and the volcano, of course.
Oh, okay. Now, I am told where we're sitting has a lot of historical significance.
Yes, because here we are in the theater, in the old theater of Saint-Pierre, before the destruction of Saint-Pierre in 1902.
There's something else of major historical significance that happened here as well.
Exactly. The abolition of slavery was proclaimed in Saint-Pierre. So we have so many things to see in Saint-Pierre and to learn about Saint-Pierre and the history of Martinique. So let's come on and see it.
Yes, let's do it. Let's go.
Now, we are going into the theater. Here is the playhouse, and just over there we are in the pit. And just there were the orchestra, and face to us, the stage.
Wow.
Yeah.
This was grand.
That was very grand.
Right, this was magnificent.
And in this theater, you have to imagine that this theater can receive 800 people.
Wow. And what type of plays, like Shakespeare, or what was?
Everything. Opera, ballet, theater, ball, concert, everything. Because that's why I said it, the little Paris of the Caribbean. Everything that was played in Paris was played here in Saint-Pierre, in Martinique.
Wow, that's pretty amazing, because Paris and the arts, and so they kind of transitioned here a rich culture of arts.
Exactly.
As well as history.
As well as history.
Martinique is a country that takes great pride in preserving its history. In the countryside of Toiselet, you'll find La Savane d'Esclave, exhibiting 400 years of Martinique history, from the reconstruction of an American Indian village to an intriguing exhibition illustrating the lives of slaves and their dwellings. This cultural and tourist site was created by Gilbert Larose in 2004. Here you can enjoy the tour of this 3-hectare park at your own pace. And when you're done, enjoy homemade cassava and ice cream, personally made by Gilbert. Next on my list is Antiga and Barbuda. Black people played a pivotal role in shaping this Caribbean nation, which gained its independence in 1981. Here, we'll visit the heritage landmark Betty's Hope. It's one of the island's earliest sugar plantations, dating back to 1651. We'll also see how the musical tradition of playing the steel pan is being preserved, taught, and passed on to the next generation. Right now I'm at Betty's Hope. It was once the largest sugar plantation in Antiga, and I'm about to meet up with local historian Dr. Murphy. Dr. Murphy, everywhere I go, I like to immerse myself not only in the culture, but also in the history. So I was told to come here to Betty's Hope. Tell me about Betty's Hope. Where are we?
Well, you're smacking in about the middle of Antigua. It's, Betty's Hope is the biggest plantation on the island. It was the first sugar plantation of substance. It was like 4 times its capacity and size and volume of all other plantations on Antigua. And it included the entire island of Barbuda in its holdings. Wow. They had close to, at any given time, this was like a mini, how do I put it, not government, but it's almost like a fiefdom, where you have the planter as the chief, and they had doctors and the lawyers and the attorneys and everybody living on this estate, right down to the lowest rank of the enslaved field workers.
And how many slaves do you think were here?
The average between about 400 up to as much as 800.
Wow.
And they lived in houses on the periphery. But as we discovered through archaeology, some of them lived really close. The ones that ran the business, the more valuable ones, the boilers, the sugar boilers, the ones that made the money for this place, the grooms, the people who looked after the animals. They were the ones who lived closest to, and they had more privileged housing, and it included some indentured workers who lived with them. So that's necessarily why we restore these things, why we restore these places, because it's what we have, it's what we have to work, it's who we are. It's us showing our souls to you, saying, welcome, this is who we are. This is where how we got here, and what we've done here, and how we've learned and grown.
Welcome to Antiga. This is the Caribbean Union Bank, Hell's Gate Steel Orchestra Spaniard.
These kids are so talented. They even taught me a few notes on the steel pan. When I hear them play, I can't help but move to the rhythm of Antiga.
Next, we're going to visit the south coast of Jamaica. The south coast of Jamaica, it's known for its stunning beaches, its crystal clear waters, and its lush vegetation that make it a beautiful place. Now, when you visit the south coast, you'll want to add the iconic lighthouse landmark called Lover's Leap to your list. Now it's known for a legendary love story.
One of the most popular places to visit in St. Elizabeth is a Lover's Leap. Now the story is there were two slaves who were very much in love, Mitzi and Tunky. However, when the slave master found out, he decided that he would separate them. Instead of being separated, they ran away, and they were chased here, where they leaped to their death. Today, people from all over the world come here to visit, not only to remember them, but also because of the stunning views, a great restaurant. It's a place where events like weddings are held in this beautiful location.
As we continue our journey, we'll visit the U.S. Virgin Islands' largest island, my favorite, St. Croix, where we'll learn about the Mocha Jumbies, who've been in the Virgin Islands' cultural heritage for over 200 years and can be traced to Africa as far back as the 13th and the 14th centuries. The Mocha Jumbi, still dancers, are an important part of St. Croix's Afro-Caribbean heritage.
Next up, I meet a prominent member of the St. Croix community, Willard John. He is a culture bearer for St. Croix in his role of founder and artistic director of the Guardians of Culture Mocha Jumbies.
Welcome to St. Croix, Virgin Islands. I am Willard John from these wonderful islands, and I want to speak to you a little bit about the Mocha Jumbies. Now, these are entities that perform on stilts. Its origin is Africa. It originated there under the context of religious ceremony and spiritualism. The tallness of these entities on stilts represented the powers of God. They were the spiritual guardians of a village. They would protect the villages from any evil spirits. They also served in a sociological capacity in which during the rites of passage, they would assist with that transition from being a child to an adult. When Africans were enslaved and brought to this part of the world in the Caribbean, with them came their culture. So this art form survived in that transition. However, it did change somewhat. The plantation owners did not allow the Africans to practice their indigenous religions. So in order for it to survive, it changed and was presented more in a festive context. And that is why today, during carnivals, festivals, and parades throughout all of the Caribbean, they are noted for being a part of that. And at one time, they were prevalent throughout all of the Caribbean, but it began to die out because the elders did not teach the younger folks. So we in the Virgin Islands, though, have kept it alive and well. And I have to say that in the last 10 to 12 years, there's been a resurgence in this art form, and it is back again in all of the Caribbean. But the Mokajumbi is an iconic feature here in the Virgin Islands.
To wrap up our Caribbean journey through Black history, we'll visit Nassau, the capital city of the Bahamas. We'll stop by the Pompeii Museum and discover how the Bahamas gained their independence from British rule. And we'll get a glimpse of the beautiful Educulture Junkanoo Museum. Now, Junkanoo is a Bahamian freedom festival that's celebrated annually. It started in the 16th or 17th century by enslaved Africans who were given 3 days off at Christmas time to celebrate.
I stopped by the Pompeii Museum to learn more about Bahamian history. So tell me a little bit more about when the Bahamas got its independence.
So the Bahamas got its independence July 10th, 1973. So after 3 centuries of the British rule, we became independent. Our very first Prime Minister was Sir Lyndon Oscar Pinland. Yes. Junkanoo is held every year. Our Boxing Day Junkanoo is held on the 26th of December every year. And then we have a New Year's Day parade held the 1st of January of every year.
I hear there's a place I can stop by and try on a Junkanoo costume.
Sure.
I might have to look that up.
Well, you look good in that.
My name is Arlene Nash Ferguson, and you are in my childhood home, which I have dedicated to the National Cultural Festival of the Bahamas. This is Junkanoo. And when you come to the Bahamas, you are going to discover some things that you did not know before. We have a national cultural festival that happens in the middle of the night at Christmas time. And we adorn ourselves with these magnificent costumes. And the festival goes back hundreds of years, brought here by enslaved Africans who used 3 days holiday at Christmas to reaffirm their humanity. We invite you to come and see what other secrets the Bahamas is hiding that you may not have heard about before, but this is Junkanoo, and we would love to have you jump in the line with us.
Now on to the United States, starting in Florida. Welcome to Miami. Here we'll delve into this diverse and dynamic oceanside city, visiting the historic Virginia Key Beach, known as the colored-only beach during segregation. And if you love art, then Art of Black Miami should be on your list of events you'll want to check out.
Historic Virginia Key Beach Park is on the island of Virginia Key, about 2 miles south of downtown Miami. During segregation, this was the colored-only beach. There was a wade-in at the nearby white-only beach known as Baker's Haulover Beach. That created the movement for this area to be given to the Black community in 1945. Miss Athalie Range was a civil rights activist who was the first African American to serve on the Miami, Florida City Commission, who led the fight to create the Virginia Key Trust for the park to be open after 26 years of being closed. There are historic buildings on this property. There's also a carousel ride that dates back to the 1950s. Who says you have to be a kid to ride the carousel?
There's a variety of activities that families can enjoy when they visit this historic park, including paddleboarding, kayaking, swimming, or simply taking a walk along the beach. So on your next trip to Miami, add the historic Virginia Key Beach Park to your living list of places to visit. Next up, I go to historic Overtown to learn about the history of Miami's Black residents. I visit the Black Archives Historic Lyric Theater and learn more about its important mission as a cultural venue.
The Lyric Theater is located in the historic boundaries of Black Miami. In 1896, when Henry Flagler and Julia Tuttle began to build Miami, the question was what to do with the people of color once they finished building the railroads and building the hotels and on the white side of Miami. They designated the west side of the tracks, the Blacks, which later became Overtown, and the Lyric Theater was born. It was built in 1913 by a Black businessman, Jeter Walker, who is believed to have traveled the Paris theaters, and when he came to what was known as Colored Town at the time, Miami, he felt that the area needed some form of cultural arts. So that led him to build what we know today as the historic Lyric Theater in what was known as Little Broadway. Florida was not allowing teachers to receive their upper level degrees. They would pay them to leave Florida to get their doctorates and masters in hopes that Blacks would not come back to Miami. So this area, the people that were going to New York receiving their education was used to the Broadway, nightlife, Harlem. So they brought that experience down here to Miami, where there were numerous clubs that abutted the Lyric Theater. But this particular street per se, it was frequented day in, night out. You could see Count Basie, Nat King Cole. Once they would perform on Miami Beach, they could not stay on Miami Beach due to segregation, so they came over to Colored Town. And when they came to Colored Town, they looked for places to have jam sessions. You know, Nat King Cole jamming with Count Basie, Gladys Knight singing with Aretha Franklin. And that's why the name Little Broadway came about, because it was a city that could never sleep. When the trains came in, the whistles were blowing, people knew that there was money to be had. The Lyric Theater was always the cultural arts venue. So you would see W.E.B. Du Bois would be reading his papers here. Langston Hughes would be on stage reading poetry. Marian Anderson, Mahalia Jackson, and the latest was Whitney Houston, who performed on this particular stage on a video called Try It On My Own that was filmed in this very theater.
Art of Black Miami is an annual event celebrating artists, exhibits, and art initiatives represented locally and abroad, featuring works inspired by Africa, the Caribbean, Latin America, and beyond.
Historic Ward Rooming House is a building that was built in the early 19-teens. It was a rooming house before the so-called heyday of Overtown. The family sold it to the city of Miami, and they repurposed it and renovated it to be what it is today, an art gallery.
Gain a new perspective on Miami's vibrant and unique artistic landscape that touches the Black diaspora.
We as a company represent Blackness, you know, the whole entire diaspora. So for me, it's not about one particular culture. It's what this is here, the melanin, the Blackness. So that's what we represent.
Visit Miami to celebrate Art of Black in Greater Miami and Miami Beach. In the next segment, we'll head to Greater Fort Lauderdale. Here, we'll visit Island Space Museum to learn about the history, heritage, and culture of the Caribbean people and the impact of the Caribbean diaspora on the American landscape.
I'm Khalid Thompson, and I'm the co-founder and a director at Island Space Caribbean Museum. Our mission really is to bring together all of the nations of the Caribbean in one location. I like to refer to a friend of ours, a friend of the museum, Dr. Claire Nelson, who is the co-founder of Caribbean American Heritage Month. And she explained to me early on in this process that the Caribbean community as a concept, as a community, really starts to exist when you're in South Florida or New York, or one of those places where you'll find groupings of us together. When people think of museums, they often think of just old things. So we do have artifacts here, but we've really presented them in a space that is very modern and sleek and inviting for people to come into. We tell here the comprehensive story of the Caribbean region, starting from the indigenous people. We talk about colonialism and emancipation, all the way through our evolved identities and, you know, all of our traditions, carnivals, festivals, music, sports, all of the things that people know the Caribbean community for. So you can see all of that in our archive. And then we also have a gallery where we change the art. We host a number of events, including our regular Caribbean Lime. Lime is the Caribbean word for kind of chill and party and have a nice drink and have some listen to some music and so forth. So we also have events where we partner with various people and organizations from our community. So there's always something fresh and new happening here, and it really is representative of the Caribbean. I do also want to say that we are the only Caribbean Heritage Museum in the world of our kind. Grateful to Denella and her whole team for being here, and we invite you to come and visit whenever you're in town. We're right here at the Broward Mall in Plantation, Florida. Island Space Caribbean Museum.
As we continue our journey through Black history, we'll visit St. Lucie, Florida, which is known for its beautiful beaches, waterways, and natural parks. It is also home to the Means Court School, the first Black school in Florida. This destination was once home of the legendary author, filmmaker, and anthropologist Zora Neale Hurston. And it's known for the legendary Black artists known as the Highwaymen. I caught up with a local resident who explained why St. Lucie, Florida holds a special place in Black history.
Local resident Kalita Scott sat down with me to share some historical knowledge about the rich African American heritage here. Kalita Scott, thank you so much for joining me here at the A.E. Backus Museum in downtown Fort Pierce.
Yes, thank you for having me.
Yes, I wanted to talk to you a little bit about the Black history contribution to Fort Pierce. So let's talk about that. And in particular, there is a very well-known exhibit here.
Yes.
Yeah.
Well, here at the Backus, there's a Florida Highwaymen Museum exhibit, and it's been here for a couple of years. And we're so proud of that Black history here. A.E. Backus actually taught Alfred Hare, which is one of the original highwaymen, how to paint. And it was at the suggestion of a Black teacher at a Lincoln Park Academy. And he just took them under his wing. And when they did that, they kind of broke the mold. They kind of did some strange things that wasn't happening here in Fort Pierce back then.
Right. And how did the Highwaymen originally sell their art?
Well, just like it sounds, on the highway.
Wow.
And thinking of the times we're in the 50s and 60s, how difficult was it for a Black man or woman to make money? Back then, the main trade was picking oranges in the groves. So what kind of courage it took for them to say, we don't want to do that for our families. We want to make a good living. And they sold these paintings at the back of their cars for $25. And back then that was a lot. Yes.
And so the exhibit is here at the Bacchus Museum.
Yes.
And is it like just a seasonal, or is it year round?
No, it's here. It's a permanent exhibit.
That's beautiful. Now, there is another heritage trail here.
Yes.
That's pretty renowned.
Yeah, it's Zora Neale Hurston Heritage Trail, and it kind of ties into where we are here with Beanie Bacchus, and she actually had a friendship with Beanie Bacchus that was kind of unheard of for the time, again, and her trail starts here at the outside the museum as well. And Zora Neale Hurston is a famous folk writer, and she's so much more than that.
Right,
right.
Exactly.
She's a teacher. She wrote for a newspaper here in Fort Pierce, and she traveled the world and ended up here in Fort Pierce teaching, substitute teaching at Lincoln Park Academy.
When you think of someone like Zora Neale Hurston, right, and the legacy she has left behind for us.
Yes.
And to have a part of her legacy right here in Fort Pierce, to be able to walk along the trail and experience a part of her life,
yes,
is very special.
It's very special, and people come here a lot to see that. The place that she lived is here, the place where she died, the school that she taught at, the memories she left here. There are people who she taught that still walk around sharing, her classroom.
So for anyone who may want to experience one of the trails, whether it's the Highwaymen or the Zora Neale Hurston Trail, to bring their kids, right?
Yes.
And make this not only a vacation, but an education. Right? Combine it, right?
Yes.
So how do they find that information about the trails?
Well, on Visit St. Lucie, there are links to both the Highwaymen Heritage Trail and the Zora Neale Hurston Trail. And hopefully they can come and take in all of what Fort Pierce has to offer, especially that Black history.
Now on to Tampa Bay. Tampa Bay is an energetic city filled with multicultural history all around. Here, you may be surprised to learn which legendary Black musician grew up here and recorded some of his first songs in Tampa.
Next, Fred Hearns talks about the significant role that Tampa played in Black history.
The Central Avenue walking tours highlight some of the people and some of the events that took place on Central Avenue. Central Avenue was called the Harlem of the South because a lot of the entertainers that people are familiar with all over the world appeared here on Central Avenue, especially when they were early in their careers. The great Louis Armstrong. We have advertisements in the 1946 Florida Sentinel Bulletin newspaper, our local Black newspaper, that say you could see Louis Armstrong and his trumpet for $2.50 at a club on Central Avenue. Ella Fitzgerald performed there when she was a young singer with the Chick Webb Band. And we also know that Ella stayed at the famous Jackson House here in Tampa, just walking distance from Central Avenue. One of my favorites was Ray Charles. And Ray Charles actually lived in Tampa for 2 years in the late 1940s. Ray actually recorded his first song in Tampa, Florida. How do we know? He wrote about it in his autobiography, Brother Ray. He even gave the address, 813 Short Emory Street. He bought a little small tape recorder, and he sat down at a piano that was in the rooming house that he rented a room in, and he played this song that he wrote. And that was his first recording. So those are just some of the things that make Central Avenue a very special place. So the Tampa Bay History Center once a month has a walking tour through the Central Avenue district. The city of Tampa spent some $6 million recreating the history of African Americans here in Tampa. And you can see all of that in that park along the walking tour.
Next, we'll head to New Orleans. Known for its vibrant French culture, history, and iconic architecture that makes New Orleans such a unique and special place. We'll visit Dookie Chase, the famous Creole restaurant founded by Leah Chase, a prominent civil rights activist and culinary icon in New Orleans. All right, you guys, we're in Treme, and we're about to go into the famous Dookie Chase, but I had to stop by and acknowledge this famous quote by the one and only Leah Chase. To be a woman, you have to look like a girl, act like a lady, think like a man, and work like a dog. All right, here we go, Dookie Chase, baby. Chef Edgar Chase, it is an absolute honor to be here with you at your famous restaurant, Dookie Chase. You know, it is absolutely legendary.
Oh, thank you. Thank you.
Thank you for having me. You know, as a fellow Louisiana native, you know, you serve all my favorites here. So gumbo,
yes,
right?
Gumbo, chicken, all the Louisiana seafood that you can imagine. So I'm glad you're here, and we're going to taste some of that a little later on.
So tell me a little bit about the history of Dookie Chase.
Yeah, so we're coming up on 80 years, but Dookie Chase really started in 1941 as a sandwich shop and a bar. Right, started by my great-grandparents, Eka Dookie Chase Sr. and Emily Tonette Chase. And what they did, they would bring in po' boys, and my grandfather, my great-grandfather, really loved the bar scene. So he would have people come in. He was just a very entertainer, right? But during that time, what was so relevant was we were starting the civil rights era and going through civil rights. So where blacks couldn't come in and cash their checks, or banks wouldn't allow them, we would cash their checks on Friday nights. And then we had an upstairs dining room that the civil rights leaders, Dr. King, as well as his team and other members of the community, white members, were able to meet and strategize, which was illegal at the time. So that really put Dookie Chase on the map in the community, because they know we were for the community. So you fast forward that to my grandparents, Leah Chase, who everyone knows, who really put our restaurant on the map, right? So that transitioned into the dining rooms that we're sitting into today. My grandparents did that, they expanded. And really, what she grew up with, working in the French quarters as a little girl, was experiencing these white tablecloth restaurants, but African Americans couldn't go into those. So she said, I have to create something for my people where they can come and dine the same way throughout this whole community. And that's what she did. When you talk about the artwork in this building, same thing. That was always their mindset. How can we promote our culture and let our folks enjoy life just like everybody else did? So when you went into these other restaurants and they had all this art over the world, on their walls, and she wanted to showcase African-American artists that same way, so she started collecting. And now, as you can see in the restaurant, we have art all over the place. You know, my grandparents, they played a huge role as far as getting out in the community as well, but they were always humble to say, all we had to do was feed the leaders of the movement, right? We housed them, we let them come on in and feed them.
So Chef Edgar, tell us what do we have here?
Yeah, so here's some of the staples we have at Dookie Chase. Of course, our fried chicken. Appetizer we do is oyster norm. And the great thing about this dish is, and when we taste it, you'll see, it's oyster two ways. So in that spinach, we have garlic, we have onion, we have thymes, cayenne pepper, and we have oysters that we chopped up. And we bake that in that spinach, and then we top it with the fried oyster. Nice. Another dish that we do is our Louisiana red fish. That's a coubillon sauce, which is a tomato-based stock with fish stock. And then we have summer squash potatoes, charred corn. And then, of course, on the end is really what brought us here at the restaurant is our gumbo. And that has chorizo sausage, smoked sausage, chicken, shrimp, crab, veal, you name it. We have it in there with a great roux. It tastes awesome.
Nice. Everything looks delicious.
Thank you. Well, let's start and have some if you want to start with a beginning dish.
This looks delicious. Now I'm going to try and be cute here, okay? This is delicious, Chef Edgar.
No, thank you.
The taste. You can taste the garlic in it.
You taste the garlic,
seasoning.
you taste the Parmesan cheese that we topped it with. So it's a great dish to start a meal with. We had the best showing us the way. So we do have a secret blend and batter that we marinate our chicken in, and then we just hit it in some flour, which gives it this great crunch. And the seasoning is there, so
nice.
Again.
Stop by Ashe Cultural Arts Center. Looking forward to learning more about New Orleans culture and history. At Ashe, I discovered more than information.
Ashe is truly a profound testament to the resistance, innovation, and intrinsic power of the cultural traditions that thrive in New Orleans and have prevailed throughout the African diaspora. You'll also discover art, fashion, a community haven, and a great place to host a meeting or event.
From the Big Easy on to the last frontier. Now we travel to the 49th state, Alaska. When people think about Alaska, they think about glaciers, wildlife, and its vast landscape. In this segment, we'll visit the Anchorage Museum, which features a very special exhibit which profiles the diverse faces and contributions of Blacks in Alaska.
Contrary to popular belief, Anchorage is a very diverse city, and you'll see it here in this exhibit called Black in Alaska. It depicts the people, the beautiful faces that make up this amazing community. For more information, visit blackinalaska.org.
Thank you for joining me on this travel journey in celebration of Black history. I hope you learned something new, and I hope you've discovered new places in the U.S. and the Caribbean to add to your living list of destinations to visit. Bye for now, because I'm off to my next destination.
The more I travel the world, the more I appreciate how our similarities far exceed our differences. We are all so much the same in the way we laugh, the way we cry, and the way we love. For each person I can inspire to travel the world and to experience a different culture and yet appreciate our kinship. We become one step closer to eradicating the ugliness of racism and discrimination so that we can elevate the beauty in discovering our shared humanity.